Hello and welcome to our third Startup Global webinar of 2024, Funding for Your Export Journey. I'm Isabel Nolan. I'm the Director of Programs at Startup Canada. To begin, I would like to acknowledge that the land on which I am on today is located on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh Nations, also known as Vancouver. I also acknowledge with respect the diverse histories and cultures of all Indigenous peoples, and I encourage you to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional territory that you're residing on today. Today's session is being recorded, and we'll share this recording afterwards on our YouTube channel. We invite all of our attendees to introduce yourselves, connect with each other in the chat. Feel free to share your name, your organization, where you're joining from, and make sure that you are sending your messages to everyone in the room. Zoom defaults to send messages to only myself and the panelists, so you just need to adjust that setting to everyone. A little bit about Startup Canada, if you're not familiar with us. We're a national nonprofit and we're the gateway to Canada's entrepreneurial ecosystem. We're here to connect entrepreneurs with the support, community, and tools they need to build a successful business in Canada. And since launching in 2012, Startup Canada has grown to support more than 130,000 entrepreneurs annually and an ever-growing grassroots community network from coast to coast to coast. Startup Global is one of Startup Canada's flagship programs that supports entrepreneurs looking to export and expand their businesses internationally. From webinars like this to export readiness resources and exclusive offerings from our partners, this free program will help you build an international market entry strategy and plan. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our partners. Without their support, we would not be able to do what we do. So thank you to our co-presenting partners, UPS and Export Development Canada, as well as our program partners, Forum for International Trade Training, and our ecosystem partners, Scotiabank, Startup TNT, and our community partners, GS1, North Forge, Toronto Region BOT, IPIC, and NCFDC. So today's conversation is focused on accessing export funding. So as you're beginning to scale your business outside of Canada, there's many funding opportunities available. And this webinar will walk you through what some of those different sources of funding will be, as well as, that journey to getting that funding and then how are you implementing it into your business. We have prepared some questions for our panelists. However, if you do have a question, feel free to add it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your function bar in your screen, and we'll do our best to answer it live. So without further ado, I'm honored to introduce you to today's speakers. So we have Jake Karls, who is the co-founder and chief rainmaker at Midday Squares, and Victoria Bennett, who is the founder and CEO of the Crowdfunding Hub. Welcome, Jake and Victoria. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to begin, I think best to give our attendees an idea of who you are, what you do. So Victoria, if I can pass it over to you first to introduce yourself.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm actually a biochemist by training, which always surprises people, and then moved through sort of traditional marketing role to end up in Canada. So the more astute of you might gather that I may not originally have come from Canada, but I've been living here for 20 years and gone through the corporate world. And then about 11 years ago, decided to set up my own company to do strategic marketing and crowdfunding. And so now I help companies raise capital through crowdfunding and also through traditional methods. And I've expanded my business into, across North America and across Europe. So I can see both sides, both the funding side, but also the experience of actually running a business internationally too.
Fantastic. Thanks, Victoria. And Jake?
So my name is Jake. I'm 31. I was someone that tried to be an actuary. For those who don't know, lots of probability and statistics. It is not who I am, but I totally respect anybody that has become an actuary. And, by not getting my job when I was 21 after college, I was forced to start a business because I had nothing else to rely on. So I started a fitness business, did extremely well with that. It was basically outdoor boot camps across Montreal. And that led me to do that for 2 and 3 years. And then I did another business throwing parties on college campuses using social media actually to bring students together. And it was a huge success on the brand side, but it wasn't a good success on the operational side. And I ended up having to close that business. And then my sister, my brother-in-law, and I came together and we launched a chocolate bar company called Midday Squares that was focused on better for you snacking, and to become a modern day chocolate company that's, products that are, tasty, delicious, better for you, functional, and a brand that's actually relevant in terms of, communication and, branding to today. So we hope to be the next biggest chocolate snacking company, not just in Canada, but globally. And yeah, we've come a long way. So I think something really cool to know is that we sold our 45th million chocolate bar, I think like last week. So that was something really cool. And yeah, I'm pumped to be here with you guys, and let's fire it up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. And congratulations on that milestone. Yeah, very much looking forward to digging into each of your own respective fields and expertise. And we only have an hour, so yeah, we'll get right into it. So Jake, to bounce right back to you, can you talk about some of what are the primary challenges and costs associated with expanding into new export markets for early stage Canadian entrepreneurs, specifically, speaking from your own experience?
So I love it. We started in Montreal originally. We manufacture here. We own our facility, and we did the Facebook strategy or the Meta strategy, which is when they started, they went college to college. They would work on, I think it was Harvard first, and then they went to the next one when they were ready, and then they did the next one. And we did the same strategy, but with selling chocolate bars. We basically did our local community first. We go into like salad bars, juice bars, all these local spots just to create some buzz within the community. And then once we felt that we tapped into enough, we would actually head to the next, city, which would be Toronto, then, Vancouver, and then whatever. And then 2 years ago, we decided that it was time to go to the United States. And I think with the United States is people need to realize that as great as a country it is, it's got a huge consumer base, massive, probably one of the biggest in the world, actually. But you got to be very careful. It's not the same. It's a huge country of 10 times the amount of people almost as Canada. And when we went there, we tried to do the strategy at first with the local strategy. We started with LA and tried to build there, but then next thing you know, we got retailers that were nationwide, and we had no choice but to support it. And that's a question a lot of Canadian, businesses, especially in our space, the CPG space, struggle with is what retailers do you partner with? How do you support across the nation? My advice to you guys would be start very, very small there, choose a region, win the region, and then take the next step and go to the next region. And I would stay true to that because each state has different cultures. Each state has different consumer habits. It's almost like different countries within a country. And yeah, we ended up getting, I think, slightly lucky, but we ended up funding our journey. And now we do 70% of our businesses in the United States, and we are a larger exporter. But like I said, it's very costly in terms of marketing and just on your, just on supply chain, just on logistics, just on all this stuff. So don't just jump on opportunities because they're there. Take your time with them, be very diligent, and most importantly, have a strategy. Don't just what I call spray and pray. It's, you just shoot it everywhere and see where it lands. Focus, build relationships, put the money and time into that region and the resources, and then go to the next when you feel ready. Don't just spray everywhere.
Excellent advice. And yeah, I think it's great, for Canadians or businesses in Canada to be able to use Canada as like their sandbox, if you will, to kind of test things out, what works, what doesn't work, before taking it to the next market. And typically it is the US. And I love your point that it's almost like 50 countries within a country because it's just so vast. So it's really not a one size fits all when it comes to it.
Isabel, I want to add something. So, a lot of Canadian companies try to enter the United States and they actually retreat back and they close and they don't have enough capital or enough resources to support it. And it happens continuously, really often. And, I really want to caution Canadian companies to go in when they're ready, when they have, enough funding in their, or enough resources to actually support it, because otherwise you're betting on luck or the rhythm of virality or anything like that to kick in that would hopefully help. But if you're ready, at least you have the chance to take your time, breathe, and actually execute what you put forward as your game plan. And a lot of food businesses, struggle there, specifically because the retailers are different. Even though we like very similar things to our country that's next door to us, we actually buy things quite differently. The retailers are structured differently. Even the same retailer banner that's in the United States and that's in Canada, the same banner actually operates differently. They're actually two different organizations. So don't just take what you have from Canada and apply the exact same thing to the United States. Understand their culture, step in, learn it, and embrace it and understand it, even from a marketing perspective. They might not like the exact same things that, your typical customers currently that you started your business are liking. So I would just be like cautious and understand before you just go embrace yourself, immerse yourself into the culture, into the cities that you're going to sell, and understand, ask people on the ground what it's like before going to just do it, because it's a huge risk and it's very costly as well.
I'm just going to add into that. We raised 542,000 for a company to take their CBD drink into the States. And, they had a very clear vision of where they wanted to get it. And that's one of the key things, is exactly what you're saying, is making sure that you have a very clear game plan of your go-to-market game plan. Because then all these retailers and suppliers and distributors came out of the woodwork, and they were able to assess them to actually which ones aligned and were actually going to help them grow their business, as opposed to those ones which would detract. And you're absolutely right. Some Canadian companies do have to come back because they've made that wrong decision. So, understanding your product, that go-to-market strategy, having that really good product market fit, then allows you to take those opportunities as you move forward.
Thanks so much, Victoria, for stepping into that. And Victoria, if I may kind of like follow on for that, can you expand a little bit more on understanding the different types of funding opportunities and why that is crucial for the success of businesses looking to export?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first off, you've got sort of exactly what Jake was saying. You've got to do your research first. And I would reach out. I mean, I'm based in Calgary, and we have Calgary Economic Development, and they're amazing. I can go to them and find out all the events globally that are taking place in my space. And they will. There's actually a grant in Alberta, and I believe there's actually grants in every province. Are actually more generous than the Alberta one, but one we have it. And you can actually go and visit the country that you're looking to expand to. So do those trips and really plan them well. Like I found that the team was amazing beforehand. I was able to talk to them about what my objectives were. I was able to go and see if the right people were going to be there. And they also, knowing the type of people I wanted to meet with, they lined those people up. So when I went there, it was a really, really useful visit. I went to London Tech Week, that's to give an example. And I was able to get sort of half my funding provided using the local Alberta grant supported by Calgary Economic Development. And then from there, I was able to see all the other events that were going on. London Tech Week is enormous. If you've been to Collision or Inventures, it's like quite small in comparison to London Tech Week, and very global. And what was the other thing that was really interesting for me was going to one of those major events. I didn't just meet people from the UK. I met people from the whole of Europe, from Africa, from Australia, and countries that we were planning to look at and start to build those relationships up. So for there, it was looking at grants, and I would say definitely look at the grants that are available. The one thing I will say is there's a bit of paperwork to do. So you have to apply and be accepted. And usually there's a timeline. So usually you're looking for 60, 90 days out. So, start planning now. When you're putting your plan together for your sort of go-to-market strategy, entering into a new geography, also take into account applying for those grants so that you get the funding and also you get the support. So that would be the sort of the first thing, sort of really doing that identification, understanding that market. Then when you're actually looking at moving into the market, often it's good to find somebody locally who can give you that local insight of what the true costs are. One of the things that I was really shocked about, or was it about 8 years ago, was how everybody in South Africa used QR codes. And at the time, we didn't use QR codes. It took COVID for us to actually start actively using QR codes. It's understanding what the local tools are, what the local marketing is. and to get a true cost of what it will be. Do you have to manufacture your goods there? Can you import? We have a service company, so our delivery can happen anywhere in the world. So our cost to enter a market are relatively low. The key cost for us is the marketing, but then which are the marketing channels? So make sure you get a really good budget put together. Again, look back at those grants. The people that you've built a relationship up with, your local province and your local organizations and Startup Canada, they will help you identify those grants that are out there. Definitely apply for those, because those are, I wouldn't say they're free money, but they're what they call non-dilutive money. So you're not having to give away any of your business for it. So definitely do that, and you get the support on the way. But you know, once you've got your amount of money that you need to actually launch into that country, then as you know, I'm going to say one of the things you should look at is crowdfunding. And one of the reasons I say that is that there's multiple different types of crowdfunding. So, but you can either use the money specifically just to enter the country, or people will invest in your company because they know that you are growing the business and you're going to make more of a return, which means that, or you're likely to, that they're going to see the return. So once you've actually got your amount, definitely crowdfunding is something you could consider.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for like really great insights there with, you know, different tools and support you should be leveraging. And we'll definitely get more into the nitty-gritty for anyone that's interested in the process of crowdfunding. And to your point about learning, you know, how your target market works in all different aspects. I was in Brazil last month, and I noticed that anyone doing business is WhatsApping. Like, that's how they communicate. It's not emails. Everyone's WhatsApping each other, and I just found that was really interesting. And if you don't know about that, then how are you going to meet, you know, if you're looking to export to Brazil, knowing that even that small piece of information of how the businesses communicate to one another or to their customers. So Jake, I'm going to throw out some numbers here for our attendees, because I think they're pretty impressive. You've raised $17 million in VC funding and $4.1 million in government debt. So I'd love to discuss the government funding first, if that's okay, to kind of carry on from Victoria's point. So what are some of those grants and programs that were available to you in Canada, and how did you utilize them?
So we're based in Quebec, the great province of Quebec, unique in its own way. And you know, for us, we built a manufacturing plant. So we actually invested in infrastructure here in Quebec and create jobs. So when we were looking to start this early on, we actually had no money. You know, we needed about $4 million to build out this facility with the machinery that's custom made and all that jazz. And banks wouldn't touch us. Even venture money wouldn't want to touch us because we were under $1 million in revenue. We were still a high risk business. And to put it into, you know, a capital intensive business like manufacturing, it's not so attractive. So we went to the Quebec government, and they have this program that's phenomenal called Investissement Québec. It is for anyone that lives in Quebec or has a business that operates here. They have some great programs, different style that is debt related, equity related, whatever you want to go, whatever is better for your business. And we actually went through I think it's the infrastructure program. I'm not quite sure. I got to find out exactly, but basically it was for our machines and the infrastructure build out of our facility. And it was just phenomenal. You know, it took a long time, but at the end of the day, we didn't have to give up equity. It was a very inexpensive loan. And the idea is it's to stimulate the local economy and create jobs in the city. For us, the city of Lachine or Montreal. And already we've created, I think, 56 or 57 jobs here, and just more as we continue to scale up and build. But the idea is it's a return on investment for the province. And I think that, you know, as a business, you know, this program specifically doesn't act so bureaucratic. I find they were a little bit lenient, and they were actually quite creative in terms of wanting to support entrepreneurs. And yeah, we've received 4.1 million, I believe, from them, and we're actually looking to potentially get more from them as we continue to expand our manufacturing, because it doesn't make sense to take on venture money for that specifically, because venture money is typically for hyper growth.
Incredible. That's wow. And when you're all of your products that are in the US, they're still made in your Montreal manufacturing?
Everything is made in Montreal in our facility. We export from here. And that's part of an agreement, obviously. But you know, like I said, you know, this is our hometown. This is where we're from. We're proud of Quebec. And one part of our mission was to build like a modern day Hershey's here in Quebec, just like Hershey's did for Hershey, Pennsylvania. So that's part of the program. And again, with Investment Quebec, I think you need to stay in Quebec if you're wanting to continue to get their funding, because it's taxpayer dollars, right? So they want to stimulate this economy, make it better for our next generation, create more jobs, and create more innovation, I guess.
Absolutely. And what a like great sense of pride as well to have, you know, Quebec product going all around the world, and, you know, in the US. I think that that's a fantastic thing to be able to keep there as well, and a great initiative. I think my colleague Miriam has just added the link in the chat for anyone that is interested in learning more about that. And Victoria, I said we'll go into the nitty-gritty about crowdfunding. So I would love to
I held back. It was tough.
So, you know, to give a little bit more context to who the Crowdfunding Hub are, they specialize in helping companies and organizations raise money that they need through information, courses, coaching, and community. So can you share a little bit more exactly how crowdfunding works?
Absolutely. So crowdfunding is raising a large amount of money from small amounts from a large number of people. So typically your crowd, your community, your network. And so if you are an existing business, you probably already have a crowd. And I always see it as the highest level of loyalty. You know, we often say, oh, you know, somebody sort of bought something, or somebody followed you on social media, or somebody did a review. We talk about that, but the highest level of loyalty, I would say, is somebody actually backing you, because they're putting their hand in their pocket, and they might be putting it in if they're investing to get nothing in return, or if they're going to get it back, it's going to be like 5-8 years out. So always the highest level of loyalty. There's 5 different types of crowdfunding. I'm only going to mention just 2 that are really relevant today. One is rewards. So you've probably heard of Kickstarter or Indiegogo. Imagine if you had a product that is, you know, you're selling it in Canada, doing brilliantly, and you now need to move into the US, but you've got to make some modifications because you know, you have to you know, just for the US market. Or it might just be you just want to sell it in the US market, and you've got to get it produced down there. Sorry, Jake, you might have to production down there. What you might end up doing is saying, right, minimum runs 1,000. You might do a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo campaign to raise enough funds to get those first 1,000 made. You end up with 1,000 people who are advocates for you, because you now have a direct relationship with them. You have their emails. You can ask them how they like the product. You can ask for their reviews. You can get feedback. Just to Jake's point about the nuances of the US market being slightly different, you can find out what those nuances are. Plus, you've already got the funding to get your production done in the States. So, you know, I think rewards crowdfunding is really interesting. The one that people always think about is equity crowdfunding. So this is where you actually give up part of your pie. So part of your business, you typically common shares. And what you're doing is people are investing in your company. And you can raise up to 1.5 million in Canada through everybody. So we only have 3% of the population in Canada who are what we call accredited investors, who are allowed to invest in private companies. This opens it up to 100% of the population so that they can invest in your company. And you often hear about, well, you can have friends, family, and close business associates. And I'm sure people on here have sort of, you know, gone to get their brother-in-law to back their company and found out that actually their brother-in-law is not classed as family. So the regulations are super tight. So crowdfunding opens it up, and there is some regulation around it. It's not like selling a book on, you know, on Amazon, but it's been in place for long enough now that it's a process that's very well oiled. Typically, it takes about 8 minutes online to invest from an investor point of view. But for somebody running their campaign, Typically, we look for about 90 days to get your campaign ready, go through the due diligence, activate your crowd. Those customers of yours have thought of you as a business. They haven't thought of you as an investment. So we need to change their mindset and get them really excited. So they come in, invest, and you raise the funds you need. Sweet spot's usually around 200, 500,000, which is perfect amount typically to move into a new country.
Thank you so much, Victoria, for taking us through, you know, what crowdfunding is. I want to follow up by asking, is there a specific stage that businesses should be coming to you or should be considering crowdfunding, or, you know, how does that work best?
Yeah, no, I mean, we have crowdfunded companies that literally were an idea. I mean, it was a strong idea that met a need, and they really did a good job there. They didn't even have a name. They didn't have a website. So, you know, we've taken companies like that, right the way up to a 17-year-old company that had over 100,000 followers on Instagram, you know, had good solid revenue, and they were looking to expand, so in growth mode. So literally any size of company. As I say, with the 1.5 million isn't enough for some people, but because you get those advocates who are going to support you, sometimes people will use crowdfunding just for that. You know, they might do institutional money or even VC money and crowdfunding at the same time, because you get very different types of people coming in.
Excellent. Thank you so much. So we are flying through our questions. Both of our speakers were afraid they'd be speaking too long, but absolutely not. So I do want to say to our attendees, if you have any questions at all for our speakers, please do add them into the Q&A box. It's in the bottom function bar on your screen. And I'll do my best to answer it live for you. If it's okay, Victor, I have one more follow-up question for you, and then Jake, I'll get into your VC journey. But when it comes to you know, attracting investors when you're working with the business, Victoria, how can entrepreneurs create that successful crowdfunding campaign to attract investors, or rather, like, how are you helping them do that?
Yeah, I mean, the key thing is, it's actually, this is all about getting you investor ready. I'm sure the process that Jake has gone through would have made him crowdfunding ready, because if you do it right for crowdfunding, you're on a trajectory for VC. So what you need to do is you need to explain that, first off, they want to know the team, especially an early stage company. They want to know the team, because if you have a great idea, but a crap team, your product will fail. If you have an okay idea and a great team, you actually could be far more successful. So the team is vital. Secondly, you want to make sure that you have, you're solving a problem, and you're solving a problem better than the competition in whatever way you define that. And thirdly is the crowd and how you sort of build that crowd. So those are three things that we're looking for. The crowd, the VCs are less interested in, but the other two parts, you know, if you can run a successful crowdfunding campaign, in many ways you've validated your business. And so that's what institutional and VC, some of those larger funders, even banks. We had a bank that said to a client, if you raise 200,000 through crowdfunding, we'll match it with 200,000. So you can use it quite creatively. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great. So they can kind of be matching it up with banks and everything. So Jake, to kind of go back to your fundraising journey, you mentioned you've raised, or rather I mentioned that you have raised a substantial amount in VC funding. When is venture capital a suitable funding option for early stage export businesses?
So venture capital is interesting, and it's not for everyone. And I don't think, you know, it is glamorized on media a lot, and it's fun, and it's a lot of money typically. But when you take on venture capital money, there's an agreement typically that you have, you are taking this money to typically grow your business and get to a certain destination and then return the capital at a higher level that it was obviously invested at, which means there's a lot of pressure. And it's kind of like a treadmill. And once you go on that treadmill, it's very hard to get off that treadmill because you basically signed an agreement that says that you're supposed to, in quotations, get to a certain level, or it's in, you know, it's in hopes that you'll get to that certain level. And it creates a slight bit amount of pressure. For us, we wanted to grow relatively quickly. You know, we wanted to grow between 50 and 100% year over year in terms of revenue growth. And that's why we went to venture capital. And venture capital allowed us to invest, you know, larger sums of money into our marketing, into our sales, into our gross margin expansion. Most of it actually went into our gross margin expansion. But we knew that that would get us to the place of profitability and would get us to a place where the company can actually generate, you know, a good amount of revenue, a good amount of profit, and then down the line, hopefully a return on this capital. But look, for us, you know, we've needed the money to grow. And, you know, in our industry, food and beverage specifically, it's very hard to grow really fast unless you have that capital. And it's a very expensive industry, you know, with the retailers, you know, they charge money to partner with them to, you know, if you have to build out your manufacturing or if you have to hire out your teams to actually expand this. That being said, if you don't want to hyper grow, I don't think you should take on necessarily venture capital money. There's other ways to do it, such as crowdfunding. There's other ways as, you know, non-dilutive equity that you could take a slower growth mentality and less pressure on your shoulders. Because when things are great, venture money is super awesome. It's incredible. Everyone's having a good time. But when things get sour or markets, you know, get into a danger zone, you still have the expectation to perform at a certain level, unless you have very honest and transparent conversations with your board and your partners, which I think everyone should have to. But a lot of businesses are scared to show the skeletons or are scared to show the hard times. And yeah, I think there's, you know, like I said, you got to be very careful about venture capital money. It's good and bad. And I've heard countless stories about businesses having nightmares during the hard times when things gone wrong, and then they had to, you know, even dilute even more because they had to get capital to just continue their business so they could reach their goals. But I've also heard amazing stories, such fascinating, inspiring stories where the venture capital firms have funded these journeys to get these companies to hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, dream come trues for some of these businesses. And without that capital, they wouldn't have got there. But to bring up a major point, here in Canada, we actually have a situation where a lot of businesses aren't getting the funding necessary to grow their businesses. And a lot of the reason that is that because Canada's culture is not so risk-taking in terms of its funding methods. And we as a country need to get more supportive to you know, smaller businesses and, you know, innovation and entrepreneurs that are starting out. I think it's critical, and not just wait till they're profitable. And a lot of our institutional capital is coming only at the profitability standpoint. So we are missing out on funding at a critical stage for businesses that are innovating. And if they don't get the funding, the innovation actually doesn't exist. It won't continue on and the business will shut. And when Midday Squares went out to raise, you know, venture money, and, you know, we thought of crowdfunding, Victoria, and I'd love to talk about this to you after, but we went to look for venture capital money and early stage capital to grow the business fast. And we actually got rejected and couldn't get Canadian capital. And we got venture capital coming from the United States. 80% of our investments have come from the United States, which means that when Midday Squares, if it does sell or has some sort of liquidation down the line, a lot of the capital will be actually brought out of the country, brought to the United States, which I'm grateful for our investors there, but we need to do better as a country into investing into the earlier stages of an organization so that we can keep the money in Canada, we can keep the ecosystem growing. And that is part of my mission after Midday Squares, whatever that after is, but is to reinvest into our country, because it's critical to have small businesses grow and entrepreneurs get the funding to grow. And Victoria is obviously doing that with crowdfunding and helping, you know, execute that, but we still need to do more after that.
I completely agree. Oh, sorry.
No, Victoria, please.
I completely agree. I mean, the valley of death is alive and living, unfortunately, in Canada. And I mean, you probably saw the data about a month ago. Actually, Quebec is the most likely to invest, and Alberta is the least likely to invest. So interesting that we're on the same panel. I think yours was 57% likely to invest, and we're 29%. You know, we've got so much money in Alberta, but if they don't understand the business, I'm doing a crowdfund at the moment for a geothermal project which is using orphaned oil and gas facilities. So taking those oil and gas facilities and actually using them for large scale geothermal. And that's something I know Albertans will understand. So I'm running the crowdfunding campaign in Alberta. But typically I will be looking to raise in BC, on Ontario, because I find those most receptive. And I think I can say this because I'm, not VC connected in the same way you are. But I mean, VCs are the rocket fuel. They are amazing. They can give you the connections, a significant amount of money, but they're also known as vulture capitalists sometimes. So you've got to see sort of good with the bad. And I think a lot of people think that VCs are the only way, and they are part of the journey. But you've got to get the right ones who are really going to support you and provide you those insights and those connections. Because often you have VCs who will provide that additional support, which is something you never get as an early stage business, and it's invaluable. But just get the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
To echo Victoria is, the venture capital firms that we partner with have been incredible in opening doors for us, both from a manufacturing capability standpoint to a retail standpoint to even a media standpoint. And we would have likely had a lot harder time getting those doors without those groups backing us, because when they back you, it's in their best interest for you to win at the highest level possible. So they will take that into their hands and do as much with their leverage network as possible. So, like I said, it's good or bad, right? Wherever way it goes. But at the end of the day, just know that when you do take on the capital, there is a treadmill that you're on, and it's very hard to step off it, for good or bad. And for Midday Squared, it's been great, and I'm grateful for our investors and stuff like that. But again, there's other options like crowdfunding. There's other options like family and friends. There's non-dilutive capital. There's so many different options. Just be aware of what you're getting into and stay aligned with the partners that you work with. Have honest, transparent conversations, and that will help along the way.
The thing is that with crowdfunding limits being 1.5 million, and VCs can come in far, far higher. So I think one of the things is also, it comes back to that matching. What do you need to raise to move into a new country? And then, where's the best fit? So friends and family, unless you have friends and family with deep pockets, probably are only going to come up to that sort of 50, 100K, perhaps a little bit more if you're lucky. So that might be for those ones. Crowdfunding might come in at the next level. Institution angels probably next. Usually I do blended campaigns, so a bit of angels, bit of crowdfunding all together, then institutional, and then VC. So it's part of that funding continuum. But I do want to sort of say that valley of death, I hope that that's something that can be addressed. I was hoping it could be addressed politically, but Jake, if you can address it, I'll take that.
Thank you so much both for kind of spolling back and forth on that. And I mean, completely valid points, like to your point, Jake, like there's not enough risk being taken with the money. I think I actually saw that we have someone in the chat, Daniela, and she's agreed to chat to anyone who wants to talk about raising funding. She works for one of the largest angel groups globally. So thank you so much, Danielle. I appreciate that, and good to see you.
I was going to say, Karls is a good group, very rigorous.
Fantastic. Jake, if I may, if someone is thinking of going down the VC route, can you talk a little bit about that process? Like what factors are these venture capitals considering when they're evaluating the investment opportunity in these businesses? So, from your own experience, what were any of the common questions or feedback that you were receiving from potential investors?
So I think it's a great question, but every venture capital firm is different in what they want, what they see. I think commonalities is a couple of things. So product market fit is obviously one of the most important things. So your business needs product market fit. Your business also needs a proper P&L, profit and loss statement, and it needs a model that you're going to put forward. When someone's investing or a group's investing in you, they want to see where you're going with it, where the capital might be, going, what will happen with this capital. And then last but not least, I think this is a little bit unusual, but is a strategy I like to call build out loud, and it worked really well for Midday Squares. Is we document and share the good, the bad, the ugly of our business. And when we share this story on, platforms like LinkedIn, Instagram, even TikTok, potentially X as well, is you give people an insight before even knowing you into who you are, what kind of character you might be, and what's going on with your business. And storytelling is an extremely powerful tool in today's world. It literally drives emotional connection, it drives trust, it drives relatability. And a lot of the investors, whether crowdfunders, as individuals, or venture capital funds or angel investors or government officials, are on these social media platforms looking for the same thing that you are on social media: connectivity, education, added value, entertainment. So if you just give them that, it will make you already separate from everybody else that's pitching them nonstop. And it makes them kind of have like a warm introduction without having an introduction. And that's how we've raised our money, is we've told our story on LinkedIn, we've told it on Instagram, and a lot of the investors already knew us prior to even having our first conversations with them. It made it very friendship driven rather than transactional driven. And I think that every single person / business has the power to tell their story, and be authentic. And it's just something that, it works. If you're not a public company, it's a huge advantage, because it gives people, like I said, a first foot in, before even knowing you. And that way it's not so cold. And I always ask my friends that are our partners in the venture world, they tell us they get pitched hundreds, if not thousands of times a year. So they need something different. Give them something different where they see you. And yeah, I call it build out loud: product market fit, good P&L, a model, a great business model with a future to growth or wherever that goal is that you're going, and then build out loud storytelling strategy. I think that you'd be set to giving yourself a good chance at least getting those meetings or having those conversations.
I really like that. There's an article in the Financial Times just last week about the biggest reason for failure of startup businesses is lack of product market fit. So, that, and storytelling is at the heart of crowdfunding. You've got to tell your story. And yeah, get out there, whichever channel it is. Well, there was actually some research done that if you tell a story, or you have numbers, or you have both, which do you think is actually the most likely to get people to invest? And often you sort of think it's the story. Yeah, you'd think it would be. I thought when I was reading it, I thought it would be story and numbers, because you get an emotional connection and it's backed up by data. But if you do story only, you're more likely to get investment than the numbers. I hate to say it, you still have to do the numbers because there will be somebody checking them at some point. But that storytelling is so important.
And there's due diligence, right? Like you said, stories will get people's attention and curiosity and emotionality. But at the end of the day, they still need to sign those documents. And you're going to need to have an organized, back end of your business to a certain extent, because they're going to ask still rigorous questions. They have LPs, these venture capital funds still have, their own people that they have to respond to, and they're trying to return the money for those people as well. So it is their duty to look into your business and, look for any skeletons or things that might be red flags. And due diligence is a rigorous process. It's tiring. I'm going to tell every business here, for anyone that's raising money from venture, it takes time, it takes energy, and it's exhausting. But once it's done, it's done. And the money's transferred, then you're ready to rock. But at the end of the day, it's also good practice to just get to know your business way more. I think with crowdfunding, storytelling is probably the first primary thing, believe it or not, because of the emotionality, and less on the due diligence. I think it's still really relevant, but I think it's less of the rigorous process on that, because when you have a venture firm looking at everything, they're going to ask you potentially hundreds of questions of why this, why that. And that's just the name of the game. And you have to be aware that it's not just going to be like, hey, I like your business, I want to give you $20 million. It's no, hey, I like your business, but can I ask you about these 10x things? And can we go over why this decision was made? And it's tiring, but it's necessary if someone's going to give you that kind of capital and trust to do what you got to do.
Mm-hmm. You still need to do KYP, KYC with crowdfunding. So know your product, know your customer. So the know your product due diligence. If you're using an exempt market dealer, so I actually have the branding just behind me, but I won't tip my camera down. But Front Funder or Equivesto are the two main companies in Canada today. If you use one of those, they will check everything about you. They'll check every contract. They'll do the check of every team member. It's still rigorous, but that's why I see it as a continuum, because it gets you investment ready. If you raise 200,000 through that route, when you want to go to the VC money, and this is the feedback I've had, when I've been to like Banff Venture Forum from VCs, is they like crowdfunding now. They didn't like it at first because they were like, lots of shareholders. They now realize it's just one line on the cap table. And what they also see is that the due diligence actually does a lot of what they would do. So if it's got through crowdfunding due diligence, it makes their life easier. And of course, it's validated the business. So they're very much hand in hand.
Amazing. Thank you so much. And yeah, I think one of the things you said what kind of resonated with me, it's sort of like that that quote that they'll buy into why you do it, not what you do, or something along those lines. Because your business can change and shift and pivot, but if they believe in you and why you're doing what you do and the team behind it, then yeah, I can believe that the storytelling backed.
Yeah. It is. And I mean, you've got to be passionate about the problem you're solving, not passionate about your solution, because the likelihood is today your solution is probably not the best solution. And especially as we move into different countries, you may have to change your solution to optimize to that country. So be focused on solving that problem, and then you'll be constantly improving, constantly getting better, and you will be a far more successful business.
I love that. Thank you so much. I just typed it down to make a note. I think that's a great quote. So we have some questions in the chat. Thank you to our attendees that have put them in. So what I might do is, there's quite a few coming in, so I just want to make sure I'm capturing all of them. I had one, where did it go? So there's a question from Armin, and they're asking, how can hardware product startups with price tags higher than 5K that need local installation of their products take advantage of crowdfunding? So Victoria, perhaps for you.
Yeah, so I mean, you've obviously got a very targeted audience. I mean, to Jake's point about spray and pray, crowdfunding is not spray and pray. We typically identify 2 to 3, sometimes up to 5 target backers, and we go after them. So in your case, we would go after target backers who would be your target audience. And this is, say, if it's a rewards campaign, and we would target them. And what they're getting is they're getting the latest, greatest thing, and they're getting it earlier than anybody else. They're probably getting a better price. They're getting a direct relationship with you. So, they have that, especially with a bigger spend, they want to be able to deal direct with the manufacturers, nobody in between. So there's a lot of benefits for that. And it's really, really focused. If you're looking at sort of more of an investment crowdfunding, so, then it's an easy story. You talk about story, we're back to storytelling again. You tell about how you're going to make money and how they're going to make money. How are you solving the problem? So it doesn't matter. I mean, the oil and gas geothermal project I was talking about is $40 million. We're still crowdfunding it. We're crowdfunding the initial 500,000 to do their pilot, but and to get access to government funding. But ultimately, it's a $40 million price tag. So, it can be part of the journey.
Thanks so much, Victoria. And then I have another question from Jason. And Jason, you might have to give us a follow-up, because what they've written is, what if I'm in the service business, not the goods business? I'm assuming that they mean when I'm exporting, what if I'm in the service? Obviously, there's not the same challenges as when you're, like a CPG, for example. I think, Jason, that's what you're asking, if you want to correct me. But yeah, like what are the differences, I guess, or the pros and cons of exporting a service-based business? If you want to take that on.
I could take that. So I think that it's the same core values, fundamental core values. Again, P&L, again, storytelling being at the forefront. of, given that you have product market fit, your service can have product market fit. It could be solving a solution that's critical to people that they need, or that service is critical to a business to have within their business. So once you have those things, I think that telling your story in an interesting way is the same thing as me selling a chocolate bar or exporting a chocolate bar. I'm attaching an emotion to it to get people to buy into it. And whether it's an investor looking at it or a consumer, I'm still trying to get their attention and their emotionality to connect and trust and the business, right? And I think it works for services as well. Sometimes I think of like a service as like a personal trainer. It's a very specific, person that I work with, that I have to like that person and trust it. So the story that he or she's telling is something that I want to be meaningful to and work with. It's not just the features that person's offering me to make me look good or make me feel healthy. It's no, I have to have intimate conversations, and be with that person. So the story that they tell and the story that they embrace and share with the world matters, at least in my opinion, for me making my decision. If I'm going to put my dollars towards this person, or if I'm going to invest in their business, it's the same thing from a core value standpoint. But I just think it's obviously slightly easier with a $2 chocolate bar than maybe a service that's over, $100 or, monthly fees of like a SaaS or something.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Thank you so much, Jake. And yeah, Jason just said thank you. So and then there's another question from Zainab. Zainab, I'm gonna read the whole paragraph if that's okay. So they've said, it seems as Canadian businesses, bankers, funders, and loaners are investing out of whom they like, but what the business solutions or storytelling. I hope I'm reading that correctly. But they go on to say, I'm a Canadian Black woman in business working to do business in Africa and Canada. But how can we succeed when Canadian investors do not want to start up with new business ideas? Who would like to take that?
I just want to say one thing. So the amount of money that goes to women-led businesses from VCs is tiny, and during COVID it shrank. So it's actually gone in the wrong direction. It was starting sort of like tiny little growth, and it's actually been pulled back. The one thing I will say is women and people of color outperform white males in crowdfunding. So the stats show that it's actually very, not just saying. So I think there is a lot going on to change that in the VC world, but until VCs reflect female BIPOC, we're not going to see the change, because that's unfortunately is human nature, and personal biases do come into account.
Great point. Thank you, Victoria. Yeah, it's definitely, there needs to be change from up top while there's change happening in the bottom, and then it's kind of like a two-way change maker that's kind of funneling down and also coming up as well. Zainab, I hope that answers the question, but if not, and also sounds like Victoria could possibly chat to you about crowdfunding as an option for your business, please do reach out. And then I have a question from Laura, who is asking a question to Victoria. Does the Crowdfunding Hub help validate the potential of a company's product or service offering in the new global markets? And if so, how do you do this?
Well, I'd say the crowdfunding validates it. I mean, that's one of the things. We did one whereby we actually had, it was a device that did your blood pressure, and it could be a sort of worn on the wrist, it could be worn around the neck. There were lots of different versions, and we did a crowdfund, and you could select which one you wanted, and that was how we actually validated it. And then we as I said, did a follow-up and actually used it as a test market. So people paid to be part of a test and to validate the product, because they bought it themselves. And then we followed up with surveys. We did a plant-based protein. We raised just over $1 million for them. They're based out of Vancouver. And everybody who invested got common shares, but we also sent them a pack of the product. So they had little sachets of the product, this plant-based protein, and a recipe book. And then we followed up and said, sort of, you know, how did you find it, you know, etc. And we discovered that actually the grind of the powder was meant it wasn't dissolving perfectly. So we were able to optimize the grind and improve the product. So we got that validation through that. So we can definitely sort of, you know, help you, you know, on that validation, you know, the big picture stuff. But I think actually running a campaign would allow you to have that direct relationship.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, Laura says thank you. All right, we are pretty much at time. I would love to get sort of final pieces of advice from each of you on, you know, for early stage entrepreneurs who are looking to export and they're starting to think about, you know, how can they fund this expansion? What's your sort of final kind of soundbite piece of advice that you'd like to give them? Jake, I'll go to you first.
I think mine, keep mine simple, is always be unapologetically yourself. You are your best version when you are true to you. And the second part of that is share your story proudly. The only thing you have to lose by the only thing you have to lose by sharing your story is really slight judgment or, you know, embarrassment, but that's not really a thing if you don't care about it. And you have so much to gain. You're always one door, one person away from watching your story that will change your life, your business's life. And it's happened to me, and it's happened to countless amount of folks that I'm friends with that have gotten new opportunities that change their business and their own personal lives from simply sharing their stories. So knowing that, I think you should share a story every day, loud and proud.
Love that. Thank you so much, Jake. And Victoria.
You know, we've helped companies raise over $20 million. We've helped over 100 companies get to where they are today. And it's been amazing to go on the journeys with them. But I'm just going to tell a tale of one. It was a vegan bakers out of Ontario, and they were looking to expand into the US. And one of the great things about VCs is what they call, or angels, it's smart money, that they give you the connections. They reached out to all of their investors through crowdfunding and said, does anyone have the connections? And somebody came back with this amazing connection. And they're now, you can now get their vegan muffins and their vegan food in the US. And that was through that connection. So I know that's a very specific example, but I just wanted to share that because I think it's really important to know that you get a group of advocates who can really help you, and just wish everyone every success as they expand into a new country. And just do your research and prepare how much you need to raise, and then find the right funding solution.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Victoria. And before I launch our feedback poll, there is someone in the chat, Victoria, asking how can they get in touch with you if they'd like to learn more. So maybe if you're comfortable putting your email or website into the chat as well, that would be great. So I've launched our feedback poll. Would love to hear how you found today's session. Really gives us a sense of, you know, how helpful was this? Would you like to see more topics like this in future? So while you're answering that, I need to give a massive thank you to our two wonderful speakers here today, Victoria Bennett and Jake Karls. Thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules. It takes a lot of energy to show up to these things, as well as, you know, adding into your busy schedule. So I really do appreciate you both being here and engaging and sharing your knowledge and expertise. So thank you so much. And a final thank you to all of our wonderful, wonderful partners, to UPS, EDC, FITT, Scotiabank, Startup TNT, GS1, North Forge, Toronto Region, BOT, IPIC, and NCFDC. Our next webinar will be on international marketing strategies. So we kind of touched on it a little bit today. That's why I didn't pick at it too much, because I knew we'd be coming to it later on, but that will be on October 3rd. So I will drop a link to register for that. I'm just trying to find the link for you super quick. So if you're interested in learning more about that, please do sign up. But thank you all so much, and enjoy the rest of your Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you for organizing
Thank
it.
you.
Thank
Take
you
care,
so
team.